Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. In this week's episode, I'm going to take a look at the week starting February 17. Pisces season begins on February 18 or February 19, depending on where you are. And that means it's time to dive into the mysteries of life. We're getting into those watery, emotional, kind of healing and feeling spaces. The featured astrological event that I want to focus on, though, is the full moon, which arrives on Saturday, February 24. So we're in the lead up to February's full moon this week. The full moon is in Virgo. It's at about 5 degrees of Virgo, so early in the sign of Virgo. And this full moon is going to add lots of energy, but also lots of emotion, as well as the potential for insight to that last weekend in February. Before we dive into all the full moon themes, I do want to share a little bit about my next online astrology training, which is all about aspects. Aspects show action and activation. Your aspects describe the flow of energy in your chart and throughout your life. Astrologers gain insight about your personality, as well as any strengths or challenges you might face through the aspects that are in your birth chart. So if you want to learn what an aspect is, if you want to discover how to interpret an aspect, you can do so in my Aspects and Activation course. The next live cohort for my 4-part training, all about aspects, begins on February 26th. You can actually sign up and start learning today. Pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, to register. With that message shared, let's turn our attention back to the full moon in Virgo. Each year, we get at least one full moon in each zodiac sign. And it always happens sometimes during the season of the opposite sign. For instance, we are heading into Pisces season this week, which means the full moon will be in Virgo, because Virgo and Pisces are signs that are opposite each other in the zodiac. Personally, I really look forward to the full moon in Virgo each year. I really love the simplicity and the kind of streamline vibes of this particular full moon. Virgo is a really practical sign, and it's all about order and organization. It's about a few other things too, but it really helps us get some of those core routines and rituals in our lives kind of sorted and sometimes updated. I really appreciate this annual opportunity of the full moon in Virgo to kind of get back to basics, to reorganize, and even put back into order so many different parts of my life. Sometimes the full moon in Virgo is a year where I'm really focused on my desk or my office. Other times it's the kitchen and cabinets and gadgets that we don't use anymore. Other times still, I find the full moon in Virgo really draws me to review my schedule and my weekly plan or my monthly plan. So if there's an area, any area of your life right now that's a little bit of a mess or is kind of chaotic, that may be where you find yourself kind of swept up in this sorting things out or straightening things up kind of mood. Anytime we have a full moon in a sign, it really helps to amplify and kind of spotlight the tendencies of that zodiac sign. Now, that spotlight, I always think of the full moon as like this cosmic spotlight, this sort of illumination of the sign that it's in. This is a very neutral influence, which means we get this amplification on the positive or productive side of Virgo as strongly as we get this amplification on the shadow side of Virgo. So as the full moon lights up Virgo on February 24th, it can be helpful to stay alert to any perfectionist tendencies that you might notice emerging. Maybe you are seeing that you can be a little bit critical. Maybe you are kind of nagging or nitpicking something about yourself or something about someone else. Virgo is the editor and the analyst. And in Virgo, we're very good at assessing what isn't as good as it could be. We're also really good at figuring out a solution to make things better. The trick with this Virgo kind of discerning analytical eye is that it's not in and of itself a bad thing. But what you do with that analysis or that assessment of a situation is really what can make a big difference. It's almost like having an eye for detail and noticing little things that can make a big difference. So, do you offer feedback when nobody has asked, for instance? Do you assess where you could make an improvement and just focus on that? Maybe you're going to be exploring how to introduce this concept of problem solving into a conversation without it being critical. Maybe something around how could we collaborate on making an improvement together. And so the Virgo kind of assessment or noticing the details or getting a sense of where in the system or the flow of something there is a little bit of a glitch, understanding what's not working well and figuring out how to solve that problem. That's kind of the Virgo piece. How we then share that or how we act on it is really where we can create some tension or we can create some connection and collaboration. So it's like what you do with that analysis that counts. Virgo is really practical and it is really analytical. This is the only earth sign ruled by Mercury, the planet of the intellect, the mind, business, and of negotiation. So when we get this real emphasis on Virgo, we're kind of at a time where solutions and identifying where a small change can make a big difference is possible. So it's not as though we're going to have sweeping large changes under the full moon in Virgo, but we make one or two small adjustments that just leads to simplicity, clarity, and even more of this kind of organized flow going forward. Virgo is a sign of the details and the little things. So paying attention to the specifics might be important under this full moon in Virgo. That said, when we're trying to assess or explore the energy of a full moon, we do want to go beyond the sign that it's in. We want to dive into what, if any, other planetary influences might be in the cosmic spotlight under that full moon. So if we go beyond the qualities and the tendencies, the potentials and pitfalls of the sign of Virgo, and we look at the Virgo full moon itself, we're going to go immediately to Mercury. So the Virgo full moon is ruled by Mercury. And at the time of the full moon, Mercury is in Pisces, very close to the sun. So that typical Virgo focus on details, systems, and analysis, it has a little bit more of a soulful or an emotional quality to it under this particular full moon because Mercury, the ruler of the full moon, is in full of feeling Pisces. Mercury in Pisces really wants to explore mood, meaning, and feeling. It's totally on board with the talking, healing kind of connection. Mercury in Pisces is really reflective. It's also very quiet, a little bit ruminative, and certainly more introspective. Mercury in Pisces is certainly more going to think about or sort of feel into things rather than, take action and be busy. So with this full moon in Virgo, it might be dreaming up the plans or the ideas. It might be feeling into the kind of routine or daily and weekly rhythm that might be a good balance for you. Mercury is also really near the sun at this full moon, and that's an important technical criteria. Mercury is in a condition known as combustion, or it's combust at the time of the full moon. And that adds a couple of really potent and strong themes into the full moon mix. You might want to dive into profound and mystical wisdom. And you might also need to note that combust caution of being aware of what you're missing or not seeing. So a planet in combustion has access to the divine wisdom of the sun being this ancient symbol of kind of deeply illuminating wisdom, that sort of, oh my gosh, the wisdom and the light from on high. But a planet that is combust is also invisible and not able to be seen. And that creates a lot of themes that we want to be aware of about what am I missing? What am I not seeing? How am I acting in a way that might be hidden relative to those around me? So that combust quality of Mercury at the full moon shows the potential for things to be obscured, to be forgotten, as if something is blocked or overlooked, at least temporarily. So this full moon definitely brings a mix of different influences forward. You might come to understand what you didn't know you didn't know. That thing where it's like, I just wasn't even aware there was all this other stuff that I needed to be aware of. At the same time, you might actually tune into whether you get an idea about it or a feeling about it, a really simple shift that will help you be more effective and grounded each day. The sun is also near Saturn in Pisces at the time of the full moon. So we've got the full moon in Virgo, we've got the ruler Mercury and its factors coming in. And we've also got to weigh in Saturn in this particular full moon because the sun is only a few degrees away from Saturn at the time of the full moon. And in fact, right after the full moon, the first planet that the moon interacts with is Saturn. And so the longer trend of Saturn in Pisces, that started in March of 2023. And since then, each of us has been going through a bit of a reality check, as well as a need to reorganize our responsibilities around the topics of our Pisces house. So that's something that you might be called back to under this full moon as well. This full moon is really activating the sign of Virgo and the sign of Pisces. It's almost like that feedback loop of energy between Virgo and Pisces that is really strong under this particular full moon. Because Virgo and Pisces are opposing signs, you might find yourself moving between practical and mystical matters. You might be dancing around the need to organize and sort out your physical space or some real practical topics. And you might need to give some time and energy to reflecting on how you could fill your soul and how you can make more space for those magical and meaningful experiences into your life. So it's that mix of the mystical and the mundane with Virgo and Pisces. One of the ways I think about this particular full moon is that it's very much like a seesaw. And so that idea of having to get a bit more organized and grounded around the Virgo parts of your chart, but also wanting to make sure you're staying in touch with the magic, that's important too. And so these energies, February 24 under the full moon, but I think also as we move into February 25th, the moon will be in the sign of Virgo on the 24th and 25th of February. So that whole weekend has got this mix of the mystical and the practical coming through. So, and then because we've got Mercury involved as the ruler of this full moon, there are some real short-term logistical matters, decisions, paperwork, organizational matters that you're trying to figure out. But if you're trying to figure it out purely on practical logistics, that might be where you're getting stuck because Mercury is in Pisces. So we need to have a little bit of the emotion or a little bit of the intuition come into the planning and the decision-making process. How do I feel about this thing? Not just where do I fit it into my calendar or my schedule? It might not make the best logical sense, but given that the ruler of this full moon is Mercury in Pisces, if it feels right or there's sort of an energetic resonance or you get a real resistance or a block about something, it might be worth listening to that sort of instinctive response. So Mercury is Mercury's influence under this full moon is showing that we want to pay attention to some short-term matters, and the presence of Saturn near the sun, the moon's first aspect after the full moon linking to Saturn, that shows that we're also wanting to give a little bit of energy and time to a longer project or topic or a longer matter that's a bit more complex, a bit more all-encompassing. And we're going to need a little bit of time to attend to that under this full moon in Virgo as well. Let me know in the comments below how this full moon in Virgo is showing up for you. If you are enjoying the podcast, please like, subscribe, or follow along wherever you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the bell on the channel here so that you can get notifications when new episodes drop. If you want to learn about aspects and improve your chart interpretation skills, I look forward to seeing you in class and in Q&A sessions at the end of February. And really just want to say a huge thanks for listening. Happy full moon, everyone. And I will see you next week.